Hello, Jordan from Hampton Roads Real Estate Photography again. Today what we're looking at is a few things. One, how to work with how to work differently with a image that you're going to be messing with in Photoshop versus a standard photo that you don't have to bring into another program. And then also using Photoshop to replace the TV screen with a photo, like a background of sunset or something like that, and also to add fire to a fireplace. So anyways, what you're looking at here on the screen now is what was going to be our finished photo after all adjustments are made, and what will go into that is three different shots. So we'll have shot 1, 2, and then 3 over here. Now in Lightroom, we don't need to change. You can do preliminary editing, but I don't need to change anything with these three in Lightroom. In some other instances, you might need to mess with them first to make them good enough. But for this instance, we're just gonna work with those three to end up with this. Now, one very important thing is if you're going to be bringing a photo into Photoshop this way, do not do any sort of angular adjustments or transform adjustments. Now, if you're not familiar, what that means is that you don't want to go down here and try to correct like the rotation, the angle, anything like that. You want to leave that be until the very last step, because what the problem that you would run into there is that this photo here is, let's just call it perfect. But this one, for instance, is not perfect, right? It's not lit up all the way. It has issues. So the way Lightroom works is that if you automatically correct the angles on this thing to make it perfectly upright like the other one is, it might do it differently for one of the other shots because it's lit differently and it can see corners and lines better. So it's best to do that after you're all done. Of course, these photos are taken on a tripod, so they're not going to change shot to shot. But again, that's something that Lightroom slightly does differently shot to shot. So it's just easier just to do it afterwards, anyways. Anyways, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and pick these three files. We're going to right click, edit in, and open as layers in Photoshop. And we'll give that a minute to load up. Alright, almost done. Now, I have a quick action made, which, again, if you're not familiar, an action is basically like a preset of tasks in Photoshop. So, for instance, you could set up an action to automatically align the three layers to, so the, all the, like, for instance, all the seahorses are in the same spot, all the TVs on the exact same spot. So there's not any like mismatches of stuff not lining up. So you could have that be an action, and the action could also, like, it could start with that, and then it could also put like another layer over here that's just blank or something. It's kind of like a macro. So, but anyways, I have an action here. If I hit my F2 key, that'll automatically align the three photos. It'll give me a color correction layer, which basically, if I need to correct any weird color cast, like from a like a red light or something, I can do that there. And I have a dodge and burn layer, which lets me, put some finishing touches. If there's any last little things to do once we're all said and done. But anyways, I won't need these really right now. But that's just part of my action, and they're just there in case I do need to use them on whatever photo. So anyways, what we're going to do here is our typical 3-layer blending to get our finished based image, and then we're going to add the fire, and we're going to add the TV in there. I'll show you how that works. So let's quickly do our little blending. And how I'm doing all this is covered in a different video. So you can check that out. It's only going to take a few seconds here. Okay, that's good enough for what we're doing here. So, just to simplify what we're looking at here, I'm going to go ahead and flatten this because I don't need to really do anything else with the base part of the photo. So again, we're going to do two things here. First, we're going to put a TV screen over the TV, and if you notice, I didn't have to leave this light flash right here, but I did it for the sake of showing more completely how to take care of the TV, because sometimes you don't want a picture, you just want it to be black, and you can definitely do that. So I'll show you to get it to be black first and then to put the photo on, because if I put the photo on like it is, that light would still shine through. And then also we're going to put a fire in this fireplace. So anyways, first what we're going to do is we're going to use the polygonal lasso tool, which is right here, and then we're going to select the corners of this TV. And this photo's a little bit out of focus, but you know, for MLS size pictures it really doesn't matter too much unless it's just terrible. So I'm going to pick the corners here. Now I have a area to work in, and all I'm going to do, I don't want it to be unrealistically black, which would happen if you use like the standard black, and you just go right over it. It would be, that's unrealistically black right there. But what I would do instead is I would pick the black that's already on the TV, so right there. And again, how to do all that stuff is in a different video. This is a little bit more advanced and straight to the point. So now I have more of a grayish black, which it's not as it is right here. I wouldn't really use it like this. I would still do a little bit of a gradient, but for what I'm doing here, that's just a good base, so I can use it as it is. I just don't want that reflection to shine through. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is pull in my TV overlay, and you know, it can be anything. I have a sunset, NASCAR race, the horse, I've got other ones, but we're just going to do the horse for this one. And the first thing I'm going to do is make it roughly the right size, and of course we're going to adjust it with the distort tool, which is right up here. We go to edit, transform, and distort, and I'm going to decrease the opacity so I can see through to the TV a little better. Zoom in and put it right in the corner like I need to. Put it right there. Alrighty. So now I hit enter to save it, and I can bring my opacity back up. So now, if you watched my previous video on just doing the TV, you'll remember that it's not really good to have 100% opacity on a photo like this, because you know, if the image is slightly out of focus, then there's no way this thing would be pin sharp as it is. So there's two things we can do to get around, to correct it, you know, to make it blend in with a kind of out of focused photo. And those two things are going to be to decrease the opacity so it looks a little bit faded, like it would if it was already on the screen. Like if you were just taking a picture of the screen with something on it, it would look a little faded. And then also, we're going to put on a Gaussian blur, which will match the out of focusness of it. So anyways, let's do that. So I can use the brick here as a reference as far as the blur goes, and for the opacity, you want to zoom all the way out to get a more overall picture of the room. and click your opacity and just play with it. I think right about there is good, because I'll do this again. I will put this up to 100. That is just a little bit too unrealistic. Even if it was a painting, it wouldn't be that vibrant. So I'll get rid of that. This is what I want to stick with. And then the Gaussian blur, that is in the filters, and then blur gallery. No, it's blur, sorry. And then Gaussian blur. And then what you would do is you would want to zoom in a little bit, and then play with the radius here to kind of match it to the brick. So you don't have to go too crazy, but right about there is what I would say is matching it. So here we go. It's kind of hard to see this far out. Let me zoom in more. I'll show you the difference before and after. So this is before and after. You know, it just makes it more natural. So that is the TV, and now we're going to do the fire. So just for the sake of, again, working with one thing, I'm going to flatten this, and then I'm going to zoom into the fireplace here. Now, the way to do fake fires, you used to have to bring a picture of a fire and stick it on there and then blend it in. But now Photoshop actually has a render flame tool. So the way that works is you're going to pick your pen, and I like to do it like this, kind of like the shape of a fire or mountains, just over the wood. And then what that does is it makes a path, a work path, that the render is going to draw it along. So we go to filter, render, and then flame. Let's see, path, I'll pick my path, filter. Alright, why is it messing with me? 1 second. There we go. Alright, how about I just do that again? I think I hit a button as I was doing this. Okay, that should do it. Render, flame. There we go. So I just, I think I hit a keyboard button that did something I didn't want it to. But anyways, so here's the flame render thing. You don't really have to do too much with this. If you like a certain look, you can mess with it. But you have flame type here, and the best thing to do would be multiple flames along the path, because that'll give you, whoop, not that one. Where is it at? I already had it picked. There we go. Multiple flames, one direction. So the one along the path, I guess it follows the curve, but we want one direction, so they're going straight up. And you can do a lot with it. You can make it so it's not random length, and they're all the same length. Anyways, you can make it a different color too. So anyways, I'm just going to do the random one, because again, it's more natural. And then we're going to hit OK. Okay. Now, we don't really need to play with it just yet. What I want to do is delete the path, because I don't need that. And then once you have it rendered, you can reposition. Oh, there we go. 1 second. I'm going to make another layer and make this thing spit it out onto another layer, because I'm going to want to move it once it's ready. So let me go ahead and do that same thing again, but I just made it on another layer, so that way it's easier to work with. Alright, now it's its own object I can move around. So I'm just going to spread it out a little bit, make it a little bit shorter, bring it down a smidge. Alright, so the other thing we run into when we do this is that the flame is too perfect again. So we're going to do the same thing as we did with the TV to reduce the opacity and to put a blur on it. So, and I'm also going to put a mask on that layer as well. We're going to do a white mask and then use our black paintbrush to get rid of the little parts that we don't want of it. Gonna just do one swipe across it. Okay, now it's more subtle And I'm going to reduce the opacity just a smidge. Okay. Now I'm going to put a Gaussian blur on it again. Blur, Gaussian blur. And I'm going to make it not as blurry on this one. Right about there. So that'll do it. So anyways, that is basically how you put a fire there. Now, if you have a fire gate, or I don't know if that's what they're called, but I've heard some people call them fire gate, fire grate, that goes over it. This one does have one, but if you have one that's made of glass and it has frames in it, like a picture frame, you would have to basically do that, do the layer mask, and to erase the flame as it passes over the grate. Otherwise, it would look like the fire's on the outside of it. But if you erase the frame away, the fire would look like it's inside of it, and it would look more natural. So anyways, that is that part of it, and then we're going to hit X and yes to save it and bring it back into Lightroom. And then now we're going to do the final touches, and this flat looking photo is going to come back to life. Okay. It's loading up here. Alright, here we go. So one thing I'm going to do first is hit the auto transform, which is going to make our verticals nice and good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And okay, that looks good. And then also I'm going to hit my bump preset to bring out some clarity. And then I'm going to also fix the white balance by hitting my white balance selector and clicking on a white part of the image. And that's too much. I'm going to pick a different part. There we go. And I'm going to add just a little bit more temperature. So we'll do +2. Okay, so there we go. So basically we went from 3 photos that were kind of like this up to this. I'll do -4 here. It was a little bit too green. So anyways, this is what I ended up with originally. This one right here. And this is what I just got now. I actually like the new one a little bit better. But either way, they're still fine. They're both respectable in their own regard. So that is how to basically put the finishing touches on a living room. I'm sure there will be a video in the future about the fire again and how to put it in there and make it look like it's inside of the fireplace versus being like over top of the grate. But that's fairly simple to do. So anyways, that'll about do it for now. This is Jordan from Hampton Roads Real Estate Photography. Please let us know if you have anything we can help you out with. And that'll about do it. So have a good one. We'll see you on the next video.